Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so thrilled to be talking about the fantastic Netflix series Adolescence with cast members Owen Cooper and Erin Doherty. And Owen, starting with you, I wanted to ask a little bit about the audition process for you because I know that initially you put together two self-tapes, and it was actually two different versions of the same scene of going into the headmaster's office and, saying, I haven't done anything, and one time you were innocent and one time you were guilty. And I was just interested in the experience of filming that, particularly since it's unusual to kind of play the same scene in two very different ways like that at the audition round.
The self tape was, in my opinion, was shockingly bad. Um, but I seen it was Stephen Graham. I didn't get told about anyone else. I didn't get told about Erin. I didn't get told about Ashley. So, and then um, I did the self tape, and then a month later, I got a recall in Manchester. So that's when I knew that I had an actual chance of getting this. So, and then the recall was with Phil. And that was I was so scared for that one. And then after that one, the auditions after that was pretty was fine. I had one with Stephen, and yeah, that was brilliant. And then yeah, from then on, I was just comfortable with everything. So yeah, it was fine from then on. So yeah, it was such a good. It was so scary, but it was good at the same time.
I love that. And, Erin, once you got this role, I know that you spoke to a therapist that you'd worked with before to kind of get a little bit more of a sense of the professionalism. And I love that you've said how the mental agility was the biggest takeaway of that and just really understanding that. And I was very interested in how you found a way to externalize something that's such an internal process to be experiencing in a role like this.
Yeah, that was kind of the biggest task for me. Like, I knew that was going to be the biggest hurdle because I am such an outwardly expressive person. Like, I just wear my heart on my sleeve. I love like being very physically, you know, I just, that's how I operate. And so I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? But also, like, as you say, I think like that's why I love therapy and why I have such admiration and respect for them, is because they are so skilled at what they do. And yeah, I just knew I had to get that right. Whilst also letting the audience into her as a human being. So in a way, I was like, God, I can't actually be too good at my job, because if I did, it would, you just wouldn't get anything. So I was like, how do I toe this line? So I'm glad that it had, like, it was, you know, people can and are connecting with her in the way that I'd hoped for. But if anything, yeah, I can't take full credit for it. Like, being in that room with Owen, it was just, you know, like, there's something gorgeous that happens when two actors are just surrendering to the moment. And it doesn't always happen, but it did with us. And, you know, I just had to be there with him, and that's what you saw.
It's wonderful. And oh, and I also wanted to ask you about filming episode one and just kind of where you found Jamie throughout that episode, because even the moment the police raid happens, we see more of the childlike innocent side of him in that episode. And the whole episode as well, he's maintaining, even when his dad asks him, I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. This is all wrong. And it's not until the end of the episode when they're shown the video footage that really changes. And, you know, did you talk to Stephen and Phil at all about just how you wanted to play it and to have the more childlike element and the fact that Jamie's maintaining his innocence throughout that episode?
Um, before the police come through the house, that was the hardest part of the whole episode, that bit, because you know it's gonna happen, so it's hard to like act like it's not gonna happen, like you're actually like asleep in your bed and then they come in, and then so that was the hardest bit. And then another, like, I didn't I didn't know Jamie, I did know Jamie, but like, because episode three was before that, episode three, and then it was episode one. So those two episodes is just like, it's Jamie. So I had a gist of what Jamie was like by the end of episode three, but episode one introduced me to like a whole new side of Jamie, and like a whole new side of his family. Because in episode three, you don't really, like, you speak about his family, but you don't really know what his family's like. So in episode one, that this is for me, because episode three was the first one we did, so episode one. So yeah, so episode by episode one, Jamie was like, it was different to play Jamie because episode 3 was so different and it was so like shocking. So, but with the help of Phil and Jack and Stephen, with all of them and Ashley as well and Faye, everyone literally helped me throughout the whole way. So I couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah. You know, and the series, obviously, because you were filming everything, every episode in one take, the rehearsals feel like they must have been so important to that. And I love how extensive it was in having a whole week to rehearse the episode and then a whole week to rehearse with the crew and just go through the choreography. And how did that help both of you just to really have this internal sense of what you were doing and just to be able to really live in the moment and be so present when it came to actually filming episode 3 together?
I think for me, like I was so nervous like before we rocked up on that day one of rehearsals, but the minute that I got in that room with you, Owen, and you knew your lines, I was like, we're gonna be fine. So like I was like, for the rest of the shoot, like for the rest of the rehearsal process, it was about like everyone coming together. And that's what Phil, as Owen just said, like Phil was so generous and so clever at getting everyone on the same page. So by the time it like came to shooting, if for whatever reason like we veered off the path that we had made in those 2 weeks, all of us just lent in and went with it. Like he essentially like he built a football team. Like that's what he was doing. He was building that mentality. So yeah, like that for me was what the kind of the 2 weeks before the shoot was for. It was about forgetting yourself, forgetting your ego, forgetting everything, and just going, we're all a part of this project. We're all here because we really believe in this story. And that's it. And yeah, there's something really freeing about that. And so I think that added to the danger of the one shot thing, and it allowed me and Owen to just lean in and dive headfirst into it, and just we were able to trust each other to go, look, you throw whatever you want at me, whether that's a yawn or whatever, like just like do whatever you want and I'll take it and give something back to you. Like there's no wrong offers, like everything is a yes. Phil was just a yes man and he made us all yes people, and that is like that's what that was, and it was an absolute joy to be a part of. And I hope that I get to bring it into the rest of the projects I do, because it's such a brilliant way of working.
And how about for you, Owen? How did that rehearsal process kind of really help you to cement and find Jamie and just the way that you were going to play alongside Erin in that episode?
The 2 rehearsal weeks was scary, obviously, but by shoot week, we were in there, you know. So the lines weren't a problem for me and Erin by then. So it was just more playing with it and like just making it different every time, and that's what made it such a good journey, like such a good episode as well. So that Phil gave us the opportunity and the freedom to just say what we want. We could me and Erin had it like we could have said anything we wanted and it would just work. So yeah, that freedom of just it's not even acting really. It's just being the character that you are. So yeah, it was perfect. Yeah.
And Owen, I've heard you say that, you know, in episode 3, the moment that Jamie starts to lose his temper and we see that darker and other side to him was something that the rehearsal process was really helpful in figuring out what that was going to look like, because it was outside of your comfort zone a little bit more than the rest of it. How did you kind of play around with that scene in rehearsals and really find how you were going to play that moment?
Well, the shouting bit wasn't too much of a problem. It was at first, but then after like a day or so, it was fine. But the one thing that I could not do was the bit where I stand over Bryony and then like do that thing. I just couldn't do it for the love of God. I could not do it. But then and then by like the end of tech week I was fine. But yeah, that was the one thing I just couldn't do it. And then but I think that was one of the end of it of episode 3 when I get dragged out. That's my favourite part. So yeah, that bit I just couldn't do it, but I was fine by shoot week. So yeah, I'm glad I'm glad I was fine.
And it's fair enough that you couldn't do it. Like that is such an intense moment. Like I don't know about you, but that moment is what people are talking to me about. They're like that, like the kind of the danger, and just like there's just something that happens in that moment. Of course you avoided it. Like no good human being wants to make another person feel that way. But like, yeah, I think it's a credit to you because you did get there and you did push yourself and you did prove like to everyone, and now you're continuing to prove to everyone like that you've got the goods, because it's such an impressive thing, like what you achieved. And yeah, I think you should be really, really proud of yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And Erin, one of the things that strikes me with Bryony in that moment is, she has this kid suddenly behaving very differently, and then he's physically just standing over her and he's trying to get a rise out of her, and just the stillness. And she's very intentionally still a lot of the time. And I was interested in kind of how you found that side of the way that she was going to sit in the room and really just try to be this wall and not give him anything, even though she's trying to get him to open up and trust her at the same time.
Yeah, it leans into what I mentioned before about just towing that professional line of knowing the job that I was there to do versus the human being on the other side of it, who is I'm just a woman in a room with a boy. Like that's actually what's also going on. And that was really interesting to me, to kind of play between the two and like have to navigate it live in the room. And that was the moment where it was the most difficult for me to remain professional, but in a way, like, yeah, those moments were the hardest to film. And actually the end when Owen left, and that was the easiest, because I finally got to let out everything that was being created in those moments. So in a way, keeping a lid on it was like the most skilled that I think. I think therapists have to genuinely apply that level of skill, but also that I think that's why I've walked away with such admiration for what they do, because I don't fully understand how they do that every day. I don't really have any other way of explaining it. It was literally it was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do as an actor, because naturally you want to respond. And yeah, I had to really, really remain grounded in my kind of my task for that session. And I knew that if the game's over, if I give him anything, if he sees any like flinch, it's gone. And that is the beauty of the episodes. That's the dynamism of the episode, is you're witnessing them completely have this tug of war, and I would lose the minute that I let him win. So I had to just, in the stillness, I had to just allow myself that little grace period of breathing and feeling my feelings underneath this lid. But it was tricky.
Oh, and I also love the way that you kind of employ Jamie's sense of humor. This is their fourth or fifth meeting, so he's kind of built a little bit of rapport, and it does feel like it's important to Jamie that he wants Bryony to genuinely like him and kind of approve of him in different ways. And I feel like you found so many great ways to kind of play with the humor and the jokes when she's like, "Oh, you're looking much better. You've got some of your color back," and then he's mimicking the voice of a gran at her. And how did you find the different ways that you wanted to kind of essentially try to pull that out of Bryony and Erin in her performance?
The start of episode 3 is always the best part, because a lot of that bit in that first like 10-20 minutes, I think like 30% of that was on script. So it was so good to like just play with it and just have fun with it. And then obviously when it gets into the more serious parts, you have to stay to script because it's such an amazing script. But yeah, the fun, it was so funny doing those things. Yeah, it was hilarious. Yeah.
Erin, one of the other things for Bryony is the fact that even when she steps outside of the room, it's not really a moment of reprieve because there's the security guard that's kind of trying to get in her space. And when she's standing in the room watching the video footage and he's standing so close to her and then just talking, all these like little passive aggressive dismissive comments of, I could do your job and all those things. I wanted to ask about how that was a very different way to kind of play out the way that she's experiencing just this suffocation, because it's no reprieve when she steps outside and experiences that.
Yeah, and I think like they were so necessary because, as you say, you kind of, as Bryony, I was desperate for that moment to offer like me, as you say, that reprieve. But the fact that it doesn't deliver, it adds to the kind of the stress and the suffocation of the whole experience for her. And that was, I think, necessary for Bryony in order to like witness her crumble at the end of this hour. But as Erin, it was also it was like, it was so it was the fuel, because I think it really kind of allowed you to see a different side of her, because when she's in that room, she is like the task is very clear, but when she's out it's more blurry, and actually the nuances in that camera room was so interesting to play with, and we like rehearsed that loads of different ways. And I'm so glad like that people are also picking up on the detail in that room, because I think my biggest fear going into it was knowing the kind of cliche therapist that we've seen, and this script, like hats off to Jack and Stephen, because it's just everything that you hope for. Like, she's a human being who is complex and is battling with like things that professional women do, but also like so that's also in there, which is gorgeous. But also, as Owen just said, actually, like the further that the script went on, there was no point in improvising, because it was so beautifully written and orchestrated that you were literally like, these characters are just alive. And so playing those different aspects of her was it was such a gift.
Yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to ask you about Jamie's relationship with his dad, because, that feels so central to it. And it is this thing where he does come from a household where his parents have a strong marriage and they genuinely really love their kids. And that was something that was very important to Stephen and Jack in the way that they wrote this story. And so I just wanted to ask about the way that seeing how Jamie talked about his dad in episode 3 was really helpful to you, as well as getting to work with Stephen and just find that relationship together.
I think with Jamie, he's always trying to impress his dad. Because when he's talking about the football and the boxing and stuff, he just feels like really, and I'm sure he says it. He says, "Oh, he looked ashamed," which I think it is a bit sad, because like he, he picks his dad as his appropriate adult, so that means he wants his dad to believe that he didn't do it, but then when they show the evidence, he knows that he's let his dad down forever and he's never going to have that connection with his dad ever again. So I think the bond with me and Stephen was because my dad isn't like Eddie at all. So and when I look at Stephen when we're filming, I don't look at him as Stephen. I look at him as my actual dad. But it's hard to see him as that way because my dad isn't actually like that at all. So that the connection with Jamie and Eddie is he's always trying to impress him but not impressing him, and that's why he gets upset and he gets angry at Bryony for saying feels like you're testing him and stuff. So yeah, he's always protective of his dad, and yeah.
No, absolutely. And Erin, I also wanted to ask you about something that I've heard you describe in terms of the sandwich and the symbolism of that, and the idea that at the beginning of the episode, she's made this sandwich herself and brought it in for him for the idea of the boy that she wants to believe that he can be or could be or is. And then at the end, part of the idea of just leaving it in the room and not even being able to touch it is the idea of you know, understanding who he is, and I can't even go near that anymore. And I was
Yeah.
interested in how you found that connection to it.
It kind of just happened organically. Like, I think it was written in the script. This sat like the sandwich, the hot chocolate. I was like, oh, okay, I understand what's going on here. But yeah, the more time that I sat in her, it just became really, really clear to me that this woman is willing this kid to be innocent. Like, I think it was really important to, and again, like, it was effortless with working with Owen to create this, but it was so important to me that there was that genuine bond between them, and I really wanted that to come off, that you could see the hope and like the kind of battle, the internal struggle and battle in her about who she wants this boy to be versus the reality. And I think, yeah, that all kind of over the process of rehearsals, I was like, oh, okay, it's all in the sandwich. And it just, yeah, it kind of, it just organically happened. And so, yeah, it kind of, the minute that the more time that we'd picked away at this story, yeah, the minute that I got that sandwich out, I was like, I understand. And I think we do this in life. Like, objects tend to represent so much more than how they present. And it's such a gorgeous kind of poetic symbol of what we hope for in each other and what we present versus what's inside. And actually, yeah, so for me, the kind of journey of the sandwich is the journey of Jamie for her and everything she wants him to be. And yeah, again, the end, it was an organic thing about, I just went to pick it up one day, and then I was kind of like, oh god. And so yeah, I think it's not until Jamie leaves that she has these flashes of moments, like when he's standing over her, like when he's just little comments. It's not until he leaves that she allows herself to fully digest what she's been in the room with, and the disturbing nature of who this boy can be. And so yeah, it becomes it just kind of came out through my relationship with this inanimate object.
And Owen, you were talking earlier about how that final sequence for Jamie when he's being dragged out the room was one of your favorite moments to film in the episode. And obviously for you and Erin, you know, the final take that we see on screen, I think is take 11, from the last day of shooting this episode. And I was interested in how it felt really different doing a scene like that towards the end, where he's so emotional about the idea of, you know, this is someone that I trusted and now they're no longer in my life and I have to go back into this room and this place that I hate. And, you know, we know that he's not getting along with the other guys there either. And how was it different filming that scene and just finding the emotion, because you knew that you'd already executed some of the takes logistically perfectly already, so you could kind of probably let loose a little bit more at that point?
Well, by the last take, I just and like before I went in, I just thought to myself, I'm never ever ever gonna be able to do this again. So on this one, I'm gonna go all out. And then by the end, it was pure emotion, because Jamie's like, he's let Bryony win in a way. So that's what makes him so angry and so frustrated and like just screaming everywhere and banging on the windows and stuff, because he's he's it's hard to explain, but it's like he's let her win. And he, from the start he was getting annoyed because Bryony was like poking at him, and and now he's never gonna see Bryony again. So, but he still likes her in a way, even though she gets like, makes him frustrated and stuff. But there's that side that where he's lonely, he's got no friends, he's got no one to talk to after Bryony's gone. So yeah, it was that was my favorite bit to do, because I could just go all out. So yeah.
I love it. And Erin, in talking a little bit more about that final moment where it's Bryony just sitting in the room by herself, I feel like there's so many different ways that you could have played that emotional level, and we really feel that sense of she understands fully who she was in the room with at that point. She kind of always knew at the back of her mind, but now it's so clear cut. And so, how did you land upon what you felt like that moment needed, or how it was going to feel for her?
again, it was kind of, it was, it's there's like this weird amnesia around the whole experience. Like you kind of, because we were so in it, I'm kind of like, God, I don't actually remember. Like, I feel like we did it so many different ways, and I don't actually remember like what I landed on or what felt necessary. It was just for whatever reason, everything we created on that take between us in that room, it was the culmination of emotions that, as I mentioned, like I'd kept a lid on, and it just kind of emotionally left my being. And there's no other way to like to let it out, like, and it just felt so necessary. That's why, actually, I think for both of us, for me and Owen, the end of the scene is the easiest, because it's the payoff as human beings that we finally get. Like, we're constantly, it's like this cat and mouse chess match, and actually the end for both of us, we finally like show our cards. Like, Jamie is left screaming and alone and really, really battered and heartbroken, and in a way so is Bryony, but she just does it in a, she expresses it in a different way. But actually neither of these people get what they want from this meeting, and that's, I think that's why it's so upsetting, because yeah, we witness these two people have this gorgeous exchange that is loaded with so many interesting power plays, but actually they do really care for one another. But by the end, that bubble is burst, and they both have to live in the reality of this horrific event. And yeah, it's kind of, it's the grief of this relationship, and what Bryony wanted this boy to be. And yeah, so like I say, that I don't actually remember what the hell I was thinking or feeling. It just was necessary.
I can completely understand that. And, Owen, with episode 4, we don't see Jamie on screen, but there's that phone call that he has where he calls his dad to tell him that he's changing his plea. But half of it's also just trying to have a normal conversation with his family at the same time. And I was just interested in what it was like to be able to record that call and to film that moment.
That call was, it was heartbreaking. Actually, no, that call was, it was one of the things that I had to do in my audition, sorry. And then, because, and I walked out of that room when I did that, and I knew that if I said to myself, if I got that part, I can't wait to do that scene, because that was so good. So when I finally got to do it, and it was the last episode we filmed, so to do that, it was so good, and I could definitely feel what Jamie's feeling, because he's let everyone down. His dad, is everyone around him, he's let down, and now that he's changing his plea, he's like admitting what he's done. So it was heartbreaking for me as well to do that, and especially Jamie. So yeah, it was it was such a good scene to do, and and when I finally got to do it, I was so excited to do it, and then yeah, it was such a good scene. It's such a good like bit to do. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate both of you talking about the show so much. It's so incredibly phenomenal and your performances are amazing. And I hope that you're both able to really enjoy this moment of how it feels as well. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Not at
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you for talking about it.
Thank you.